Tapestries were usually displayed in royal castles to provide installation and as a way to display their wealth. Those tapestries would take such great craftsmanship and long meticulous hours to be able to transform threads into a piece of artwork. Nowadays, those artifacts are a staple accessory in our grandparents' household, while those valued items are usually worth around 50 or 100 or even more, which I think is a fair price for all the materials and work it takes to make a tapestry. I happened to find my royal artifact at a local Goodwill store for only $7. And when I saw this beautiful tapestry blanket, I thought to myself, why don't I buy this and destroy it for fun? So that's why today I'm making a jacket out of this blanket. Act 1 Reference. To make the jacket, I have to have a well-fitted jacket to trace the pattern from, so I'm using my favorite denim jacket to use as a reference for this project. It has the right sleeve length, not too long and not too short, sits right on my wrist, baggy but not shapeless, just the right silhouette and size and all. Now that I found the right reference, it was time to trace it out. I would start by tracing the sleeves with a pencil and going it over with a Sharpie. In the making of the pattern, I didn't add any seam allowance since that was what I was gonna add on to later on when I was cutting out the fabric. I'm planning to add at least an inch or half an inch seam allowance so I can do a French seam. Now that I traced out the three main parts of the jacket, the body of the jacket, the sleeves, and the collar, it was time to transfer it to the fabric. But before I start cutting away, I do want to take the time to appreciate the beauty of this blanket. The more that I look at this blanket, the more attached I get by every second. I feel like this would make such a great carpet for yoga and exercises in my room. This was probably one of the most beautiful tapestries I've ever came across, and to be honest, I think I hit the jackpot with this one. The front side has the nice floral design and the hummingbirds flying around. She has fringes that shows what colors she's made out of. Looking and admiring at this piece gives me a sense of serenity, making me feel like I'm in a garden. While the back is the inverted version of the front, it still looks beautiful like a green forest, and it reminds me of the painting of Parc Monceau by Claude Monet. Act 2 Tracing and Cutting. At first, I was struggling to place where I should cut the front part of the jacket from because I wanted to cut it from the center since it had the most floral prints on it. But if I did start cutting from the center, that meant that I had less space for the other pieces to cut out from. And I also didn't want to trace it on the corner since it had less flowers. But at the end, I still ended up tracing it on the top right corner, choosing what's more efficient over the sake of the appearance. Now that I had all the pieces traced on, it was time to cut it out. Now that I cut out all the pieces, it was ready for the next step, sewing. Gathering all the pieces, I went ahead and sewed the sleeves together. Since I am doing a French seam, I'm sewing from the outside, then flipping it over to sew from the inside to hide all the seams. Whenever I'm working with a fabric that easily frays, I usually start it off with a straight stitch, then go over the edges with a zigzag stitch to stop the fraying. Flipping it over to the inside, I sewed about a half an inch away from the seams to hide the edges. Once I was finished with the sleeves, I sewed the back and the front of the jacket together by sewing the sides and the shoulder seams. After sewing the front and the back jacket together, I tried it on to test the fitting, and it fit like a very loose vest. Here's me getting hyped up over an unfinished jacket without sleeves. Ooh, check out this drip. Drippy drip. Why did I say that? That was so uncalled for. Please ignore me being cringe in this video. Like, I got too excited. Anyways, I can't bear watching another second of this video, so I'm just gonna go ahead and show you the part where I attach the sleeves. After attaching the sleeves, I had to hem the center front of the jacket and hem the bottom. Then it was time to make the collar. I laid the pieces on top of each other with the right side touching. I sewed it from the inside out with a straight stitch, then went over the edges with a zigzag stitch to stop the fraying. Then I flipped it right side out to top stitch the hem to flatten the collar. After sewing the body of the jacket, sleeves, and the collar on, I selected 6 pieces of unique buttons to sew on to the front. I placed each buttons about 2 inches apart from each other to evenly fit 6 buttons on the front. Once I sewed all the buttons, I marked where I wanted to place the buttonholes. Each of the buttonholes had a slightly different size from each other since none of the buttons were exactly identical. Then I changed the settings on the sewing machine by switching to zigzag stitch, then putting the stitch length and the thread tension on 1. If you notice here, I'm not using a proper method to install a buttonhole by using a buttonhole foot. I'm just using a standard zigzag stitch to get the job done. And the reason for this is because the buttons were too big to fit in the buttonhole foot. By the way, if you never use the buttonhole foot, it can extend or shrink depending on the button size you're working with, but for the buttons that I was using, it couldn't extend any longer to fit, so I ended up having to install it manually instead. And honestly, I prefer to make buttonholes manually since it causes less problems because my sewing machine has no tolerance with the buttonhole foot for some reason. When I tried on the jacket for the 3rd time, I was pretty happy with how it looks, and honestly, we could just end it right here and say that the jacket is complete, but I still had a ton of leftover fabric that I wanted to use up. And since the jacket looked like it needed a space to store my hands and my phone safely, I decided to make some pockets. And when I say pockets, I'm not talking about some basic pockets. I wanted to challenge myself to sew something I've never sewed before, so I decided to make a single welt pocket. I started by sewing the flap, then cut out this 2 circular pouch shaped piece for the actual pocket. After making the flap and the pocket, I attached the flap on the front of the jacket, aligning it to where I marked the pockets to be. After that, I attached the pocket pieces, cut out a slit between the pockets, then tucked in the pockets into the slit. If you want a long-depth tutorial on how to make a single welt pocket, I'll link the video I watched in the description so you can follow along. For the final step in finishing the jacket, I flipped it to the inside of the jacket to sew the pockets together. And here's the final reveal that we've all been waiting for. Here's my first attempt in trying to do a cool slow-mo montage of me putting on the jacket but miserably failing because I didn't catch the jacket in time, and you can see the disappointment in my face right here. Alright, take 2 was much better than the first attempt. I mean, look at this absolute cinematographic piece of work right here. It's just something about the way the fabric moves in slow motion that makes it look like it's shot in a luxury brand commercial like Ralph Lauren or Gucci. Okay, maybe not that expensive looking since it's not like it's filmed in some fancy $10,000 4K camera lens or whatever, but I think it looks cool and that's all that matters to me. The jacket turned out to be better than I expected. The fitting is perfect and I'm proud of the pocket placement. Not only is the jacket stylish, but it serves a functional purpose with pockets for awkward and introverted people whenever they get into a situation where they're at a party and they don't know what to do with their hands when they're talking to people. And here's me getting a happiness spasm because I have a place to put my hands in whenever I need one. Here's the close-up of the collar. The collar looks amazing, and also the single welt pocket. For the sleeves, I decided to keep the fringe since I thought it adds an interesting personality to the jacket. And also, this happens to be a reversible jacket. Well, kind of. I feel like you do need somewhat of an acquired taste in fashion to be able to nail the inside out look, but either ways, it looks good as it does on the outside. I put my phone case in the pocket to check if it was fall proof, and I'd say that it's pretty good at keeping your phone nice and secured whenever you need to run away from a robber or run over a fence when you're running away from the cops. I'm just kidding, obviously. Please don't do anything illegal. Anyways, I'm gonna be listing this jacket on my Depop shop, so definitely check it out. And if you haven't liked and subscribed to my channel yet, Get out of this video right now. You're telling me that you watched all the way to the end of the video and you haven't done that yet? Unacceptable. Yeah, that's right, Patricia. Click that button. On 2 kinds of potential. Plus no ice house is what you're warm. 1, 2,